Hamilton's crossover odds increase, and Calgary's playoff chances come down to one game. This week on Placed on the 55. Jess, we're heading into week 18, and we should just start right off the top with our results of week 17. It was looking really good for you after that first game on Friday.
No kidding.
You were up 1-0. At the half, Winnipeg was leading by 34-6 against Edmonton, a complete blowout. But for the rest of the weekend, it was tough for you. You finished 1-3.
Going into the second half of Friday Night Football, I had the Lions to win, and they were up 16-0 against your Tabby Cats at the half. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, great. The Tabbies are going to be tired traveling all the way from the East Coast out to the West Coast. It's now like 12:30 their body clock time. They've shown nothing in the first half. And then all of a sudden, Bo Levi Mitchell comes out and has like the second half of his freaking career. He set a record personally for the most like completions in a second half, but also set a record for the Hamilton Ticats as well.
Final score 32-29. That means Hamilton scored 32 points in the second half and overtime. Bo Levi has just resurrected himself in the second half of this season. His case for most outstanding player of the year, it's increasing.
You want that to happen because you're a big Tabbies guy, and meanwhile I still think they're going to be fourth in the East, but you're still picking them to go to the Grey Cup.
Well, that's the thing. They could be fourth in the East, right? Like, you're probably not wrong. But their chances of a crossover as a result of being fourth in the East, they went up on the weekend, beating BC. Like, that's one of those 4-point games. BC needed to win in order to put a little distance on them. And they lost, and they sit 7-8 now on the season. And they're at risk of maybe falling to fourth in the West. Seems unlikely. I think more likely we'll see Hamilton slide over into the West. That means pushing BC out, though, which I don't want to see.
Well, no, I still think that on the West you're going to have Winnipeg and BC 1 and 2.
How? Saskatchewan's playing way better football right now than BC is.
Well, we got the two best quarterbacks in the league, so hopefully we figure out something soon.
Sure, you got two of the best quarterbacks in the league. One's not playing, and the other one looks to have the yips. And then you got a coach that doesn't know what to do. He doesn't want to take the confidence out of his number one guy, but putting in number two. And number two doesn't want to go in with that pressure and try to hand the ball to his running back and watch it hit the turf. It's a mess. It is a mess in BC.
I disagree. And I don't think Nathan has the yips. He's the highest paid player in the CFL.
He has the yips because with a 16-0 lead, he then goes out and plays the rest of the game, and the team only puts up 13 points. He had, what was it here? I got the stat. No touchdowns, no interceptions, 265 yards. Invisible. That's an invisible quarterback, Jess.
Yeah, I didn't like the BC Lions second half, but I wouldn't pin it on Nathan.
Got to pin it on somebody out there on the field.
Yeah, well, a football game is never, as I said, it's never ever won or lost on one particular play. But I have to say, like, when that CB got flagged in overtime, that play kind of lost them the game. Lots of other things line up in a football game to get them to that point. You can't just pin it on one particular play by one particular guy. However,
you're right, Jess. Some mistakes are too large to overcome, especially when there's no time left in the game, like that one. But at the end of Friday night, you're sitting 1-1, and you're thinking, okay, heading into Saturday, things look pretty good, feeling good about your Ottawas. And then they go out and they lay an egg as well and lose that game 29-14 to the mediocre Rough Riders.
The big TSN turning point for me was after the Winnipeg game, and then halfway through the Lions game, I'm thinking, I'm awesome. This is good. I'm getting everything back. After halftime at BC Place, you ended up going 1-3 on the week.
What about that game 3, though?
I was actually able to watch it on TSN Plus, which has and it's an enhanced feed. They light up the players like John Madden football video game. I don't want to see that. TSN 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 couldn't pick up the game.
Is it like the glowing blue puck of Fox NHL days back in the mid-90s?
In the same league or same category. It's not as bad as a glowing puck. At least they're not like glow in the football or anything like that.
So you lose that game. Going into that fourth game of the week, I was 2-1 thinking, awesome, I'm going 3-1. Montreal's going to beat Toronto. They ended up losing the game. Rain was a huge factor throughout the game. A team that I thought was going to spank Toronto just didn't. I go 2-2 and you go 1-3 for the week.
Regarding the weather, they always say both teams are playing in that weather.
So that on the season puts us 36-31 for myself. And then you are sitting 30-37.
7 games under 500. That's going to be hard to make up.
Yeah, we got 4 weeks of football left. The BC Lions only have 3. They're finishing this season on a bye. 3 other teams get a bye this week.
Another 3-game week in the CFL. I kind of question that. I'm like, obviously the schedule has to be with 9 teams playing 18 games. There's got to be these weeks that there are only 3 games. But I'm kind of questioning, like, why wouldn't they put some of those games in the summertime instead of after Labor Day? Because I think like most people start focusing in the CFL a little bit more after Labor Day than they would maybe in like June or July.
I think it's the opposite, because you think about next weekend, you've got baseball playoffs, NFL, hockey, and NBA preseason.
Yeah, you might be competing with college football on the Saturday, but
No, you're competing against the World Series, NHL, NBA, college football, all of those. The only ones you're not competing against is the NFL. But those other leagues, they're huge draws. When I'm a schedule maker at the CFL head office, yeah, I'm going to give a bunch of people breaks on those weekends, knowing that if I put product on the TV, no broadcaster is going to pay for it because no viewership's watching it.
Right, but the NHL hasn't started yet, and this week we only got 3 games. But I'm buying into it, that argument a little bit farther into October. I don't think anyone crosses over from Canadian football to the National Basketball Association.
But an advertiser, like, they would rather spend their advertising dollars during an NBA broadcast than during a CFL broadcast. It all comes down to the same thing that everything else in life does.
Money.
If you look at the buys this week, so yeah, 3 games, blah, blah, blah. Basically, the entire East is not playing this week. Hamilton's the only team out of the East that has a game.
Yeah, the first week does feature your Tabbies. They are 4.5-point dogs against the Bombers. I'm having a hard time with this one.
Well, the Bombers have clinched. Brady's going to be out there. He's pushing for MOP this year. It's him and Levi. They're kind of in the lead. And if he has a big 150, 200-yard game, that might put him over the top, especially if Hamilton doesn't actually get into the playoffs, because it feels unlikely they're going to give MOP to a player on a team that's not in the playoffs.
I agree with that. Winnipeg can't start taking time off or half-assing it. That's how first-place teams lose that Western final, and someone else sneaks in behind them. With Hamilton being 4.5 dogs, and what Bo Levi did last week, can't believe it, John, but for the first time, I believe this season, I'm taking those Tabbies. If Bo Levi does anything close to what he did in the second half of the Lions game last week, they're definitely going to win.
That sounds good, Jess. I'm going to go Winnipeg.
Oh my God, why you're betting against your Tabbies? Are you just doing that to fuck with me?
No, I'm doing that because the Hamilton's won too much.
That's what they call a hot streak.
I was expecting them to go 3-1 in their last 4 games. This game's their 1. They're going to lose this one, win the next 2.
Okay.
Do you really want Hamilton to win?
Yeah, friggin' right I do. Because I want the Lions to have a decent shot at first or second place. And if the Bombers lose, that's good for a BC Lions fan.
So first, the Lions have no shot at first place. That's not going to happen. They're not going to get first in the West. The door is closed. They're lucky to get second in the West. But more of a risk to them right now is if Hamilton wins, now all of a sudden BC has to worry about finishing behind Hamilton on the crossover. Like if Hamilton crosses over and BC gets pushed out, they're not in the playoffs.
Well, no, it's not. Well, if BC's second, they're fine.
Yeah, if...
Who are the other losers in the West that are going to come out? Like Saskatchewan, Calgary?
Not Calgary. Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, and then Hamilton slides over. Your 3 Western Division playoff teams.
Okay, no, but at least 2 teams in the West or the East are guaranteed playoff spots.
Winnipeg and Saskatchewan.
Oh, you think Saskatchewan's going to leapfrog BC?
If BC keeps playing as poorly as they have been, they're not getting leapfrogged. Saskatchewan's in second right now. BC's in third.
They have a losing record. It's crazy.
It is crazy. And so if Hamilton wins, you win some money. That's great. But like right now, Saskatchewan's got 15 points on the season and BC's got 14. Hamilton is close behind with 12. If Hamilton wins, now they're 14-14, and that puts even more pressure on the second game this week for BC to do something.
Yeah, that'd be really weird for the Tabbies to cross over to the west and play Saskatchewan.
It'd be really weird, especially with BC sitting on the outside of that bubble going,
hey, yeah, we're hosting the Grey Cup. Like, how do we mess this up?
Yeah. Oh, and Nathan, here's a huge check. And
Vernon
Adams, sorry, this higher priced quarterback who couldn't do much came in.
You shouldn't say it's like you're being hard on Nathan. He played, like, if you look at that first half of the game last week, he played awesome.
No touchdowns.
He led the team to a 16-0 lead going into halftime. Like, what else can you want?
He had a good Labor Day at home in Victoria, and that's about it for him. I hope he does better in Game 2 against Calgary.
You're really hard on Nathan. I don't know. Going into that game, the Leos are still favored by 7.5 points, so over a touchdown. That's a bit of a tough one. The Stamps have looked surprisingly bad, I almost say almost every week. I'm a big Dave Dickinson fan. I'm going to keep going with the Lions.
You are sitting inside your own mini Lions den. There's no way they're going to cover 7.5 against Calgary. Dave Dickinson, like you said, probably went into that locker room and told his guys, no one's going home. We're practicing. We're getting back in this. And they're going to come into BC Place where the Lions haven't won a game for 10 weeks.
And that's a short road trip for Calgary. That's like the easiest road trip for Calgary, maybe outside Edmonton, but like a 1 hour plane ride and boom, you're in.
So you're going to stick with BCA and hope they cover that 7.5?
Ah, crap. Yeah, I'm gonna. It feels like you're going for Calgary.
Well, yeah. I mean, if they start VA, maybe they have a chance, but
What? No. Oh, it's another... No, it's another bad Nathan comment. Not out. Nathan's awesome.
We'll see what you say about that in week 19 when you're like, oh my God, they've lost to Calgary, blah, blah, blah. I'm taking the points.
I know, you're taking the points. They might lose to Calgary by the points, but they gotta win that game. That should be a slam dunk for the Lions if they actually want to be at least second place in the West.
Dude, they could win that game and still barely finish in third in the West.
Well, no, I'm hoping they're going to roll off like 3 or 4 more wins like straight.
Yeah, they only have 3 games left this season. They can't do 4. Remember, they're sitting around in the last week waiting with their destiny in someone else's hands. The only thing they can control is the next 3 weeks.
Exactly. So they have to win the next 3 games. Will they cover by 7.5? It's super possible if there's a bit of an offensive explosion.
If Dickinson's smart, he's going to put the ball in the running back's hands and...
I just hope for the best.
And they will just run over BC because BC can't protect against the run anyway.
And Jake Meyer has looked not that great this year. And they don't have a good second stringer.
Or play around him and give the ball to the running backs. So that takes us to third game, which looks like a surefire 2 points for Saskatchewan, sitting in second right now, possibly putting some distance on the Lions. Saskatchewan are down 2.5 against Edmonton in this game.
I'm taking Edmonton with the 2.5 free points. I like their momentum. They've been probably the hottest team in the last third of the season. I like the Elks. If Trey Ford keeps doing what he's been doing, I like him to sort of upset the Roughies. And if you're giving me 2.5 free points...
I think what your heart wants is a complete disconnect from what your brain should be doing.
Well, that's usually what happens to me.
30 and 37.
So that tells... Are you taking the fucking Roughies? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the Rough Riders against Edmonton. They had a couple good games there. Last week, they just stunk. They gave up 55 points to Winnipeg.
That was against Winnipeg, who's like the best team in the league. The Rough Riders suck.
Winnipeg's the second best team in the league. Guess who the third best team in the league is? Saskatchewan.
No.
Yeah, Ottawa has given up more points than they have 4.
So you got Winnipeg, Montreal, and then the third best you're saying is Saskatchewan.
Yeah, you look at Ottawa's stats, they have more points, they have a better home record, blah, 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 blah. But when you give up more points than you score as a team for the season, you're not the third best team.
That's a tiebreaker.
If it does come down to a tiebreak between the East and a West team, it'll be BC and Hamilton for that third spot in the West.
No, it won't. BC's going to come in at least second. We're going to have to host a playoff game.
He'd like to. Saskatchewan's my bet on this one. They're going to easily cover 2.5.
Okay. I don't want to see McLeod Bethel Thompson at all. So hopefully Trey Ford's playing a little game. So do we go against each other on every single game of this 3-game week in the CFL?
I think so, yeah, because I bet with my head and you bet with your heart.
Yeah.
I am taking points on one of these games, and then I'm taking the favorites on the other two. It's a big week for BC, maybe a bigger week for Calgary.
Speaking of the Lions, I have to point out that I'm wearing my BC Lions Every Child Matters t-shirt. Orange T-shirt Day was yesterday.
The logos for the CFL on all the teams, they're awesome. Most of them are better than their actual logos.
Totally. I totally like even the Saskatchewan Rough Riders behind like the regular S on their helmet, and it looked great. And I agree, like with the Lions and the Roughies. Yeah, I'd be like, you know what? I would have no problem if you changed that to your full-time logo. It looks better. No, I think it does.
I do too. Yeah, and we had a listener write in and say the same thing, and we thank her. If you want to write the show, you can at placedonthe55pod@gmail.com. Have a great week, Jess. Talk to you later.
You got it, bud.